The wind howled across the barren plains of the planet's surface, kicking up red dust that clung to every suit and ship hull. Fleet Commander Marta Royce stood atop the observation platform, scanning the desolate terrain with eyes honed by decades of war. Behind her stood the super soldiers engineered humans bred for conflict, each bearing enhanced physical and mental capabilities. Their measured breathing and unwavering postures radiated control. They had been built to be unstoppable, yet they were younger than the average soldier fresh out of the academy. Every set of eyes was alert, studious, and prepared for the next command. These warriors were humanity's monumental achievement in genetics, the apex of science and discipline, designed for victory in battles both known and unseen. From the vantage point, Marta watched the last of the dropships land, discharging rows of advanced war machines and supply crates. The planet, designated Stratton CN1, was a strategic choke point between Sol Coalition territory and the alien alliance that threatened humanity's expansion. Decades of skirmishes had led to this final confrontation. The Coalition was done with stalemates. They wanted a definitive conclusion, and these engineered soldiers were the key. Their existence had sparked countless ethical debates back on Earth, but the idealists were no longer in power. The emergency powers of wartime governance had overtaken moral hesitation. Survival trumped principle, at least for now. While the rest of the army pitched base camps and assembled hover tanks, Marta addressed the super soldiers. "You know what's at stake," she began, her voice cold and clear. "This is the line they cannot cross. If we lose Stratton CN1, they'll move straight for Earth. And Earth, your birth lab, training grounds, and everything you value will fall." In their shining helmets, not a one flinched. Every soldier stood rigid, an image of collective resolve. "Intelligence predicts the enemy will be sending in a specialized legion tonight. They will attempt to gain a foothold in the canyons to the north. We need to drive them back, no matter the cost." Nodding in acknowledgement, the super soldiers marched toward their carriers, forming deadly ranks that would soon converge on the dusty canyons. Several hours later, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in dark violets and deep reds. The canyons loomed, vast and craggy, offering the perfect terrain for ambush. Scout drones flitted overhead, scanning for any sign of the enemy. Marta's comset crackled. "Commander, we have movement, non-human life signatures reading in the hundreds." Marta stiffened. As planned, humanity would make the first decisive strike. She motioned to Sergeant Arlo Kincaid, one of the earliest success stories in the super soldier program. Arlo led his platoon through the maze of rocks, their specialized boots designed to silence footsteps across even the toughest terrain. The neural implants in their brains allowed them to interpret tactical data faster, to coordinate with minimal communication. They were the perfect infiltration squad. Only the wind and the soft crunch of pebbles underfoot broke the calm. Then, a flash of brilliant green light burst across the canyon walls. The enemy had spotted them, and plasma fire scorched the night. Arlo signaled. His soldiers dispersed into a choreographed dance of warfare. Each bounded from rock to rock at superhuman speed, returning precise bursts of fire. Where an ordinary soldier might recoil in fear, the super soldiers leaned into their heightened reflexes, their hearts pounding at optimum speeds and never faltering. Some hammered the ground with compressed shock grenades, while others scaled vertical walls with near spider-like agility, ambushing from above. In an instant, the canyon morphed into a swirling onslaught of brilliance and death. Behind the first line, Marta observed from the command tent, tapping her console to access a direct feed from their helmet cameras. The synergy was breathtaking. The soldiers coordinated as if they shared one mind, an unintended benefit of roaming gene expressions and neural implants that synced them to each other in ways scientists were still unpacking. Crimson tracer rounds threaded through the alien ranks. Some aliens fired back with desperate bursts of plasmic energy, but the super soldiers' bio-threaded armor absorbed much of the impact. Those that did sustain injuries refused to fall. Regenerative nanites within their bloodstream immediately clotted wounds, scabbing over in seconds. It was the most formidable battlefield performance humanity had ever fielded, surpassing even the expectations of the geneticists who had spawned them. In time, the remaining enemy force realized the futility of direct engagement. A series of high-pitched alien warbles echoed across the canyon, an apparent retreat call. Arlo signaled his platoon to hold position. Exhilaration rushed through him, but he forced it down. They had been trained to shun emotional surges that distracted from the mission. A few scouts were dispatched to track and confirm the enemy's flight path. The first engagement on Straton CN-1 had concluded, and the super soldiers had proven their worth. The cost, though, was heavier than the near-flawless execution suggested. Several of the soldiers had burn wounds. 2 had been carried out unconscious. Even so, no one had died. Their advanced physiology had saved them from lethal hits, validating years of questionable research and secret experimentations back on Earth. That night, as the camp settled, the super soldiers retreated to their own section of the barracks. Unlike standard troopers who might have engaged in idle chatter, these soldiers remained generally taciturn. Their private existence was shielded behind mental wards and implants that encouraged introspection over camaraderie. There was camaraderie, but minimal outward expression. It was part of the design. Fewer emotional attachments, reduced vulnerability. But within Arlo's group, there lingered a sense of pride. They had exceeded all performance metrics, accomplishing in hours what an entire garrison might have taken days to do. They, after all, were the culmination of humanity's relentless pursuit to perfect itself. Earth's mastery of genetics had been a slow, secret tide rolling in. For decades, the lab beyond the Himalayan mountain range, Project Vertex, operated in total hush-hush. There, genome editing had refined selected humans into next-generation soldiers. High-level military officials had quietly funneled resources into perfecting these prototypes, dreaming of an unstoppable warrior class. At first, the ethical debates had raged. Factions within the scientific community labeled the experiments abhorrent, an affront to the sanctity of natural human evolution. Politicians had found ways to keep it hidden, insisting the topic was classified for national security. Wartime tension with the alien alliances created fear among the populace, and fear, as always, paved the way for acceptance of extremes. Eventually, even the loudest critics were drowned out by the mobilization for survival. The project expanded, culminating in the soldiers now stationed on Straton CN-1, a living testament to Earth's willingness to do anything necessary to prevail. The next few days brought further skirmishes. The alien alliance appeared determined not to cede ground. They attacked supply routes and set up decoys. Each time, the super soldiers responded with tactical perfection, flushing out saboteurs and smashing defenses. Yet the victories never felt triumphant to Marta. She knew how these soldiers came to be, and noticed subtle signs that they, too, questioned themselves. Despite their unwavering loyalty, they were human enough to seek meaning. Between battles, some fiddled with old relics stashed in their footlockers, photographs or letters from the labs that had raised them. Others closed their eyes and sank into silent recollection, as if trying to conjure a feeling beyond the disciplined emptiness. They were advanced, but not soulless. This war was forcing them to confront that complexity. On the 4th day, Intel identified a larger alien stronghold in the southwestern region of Straton CN-1. The Coalition's standard forces would engage from the front, while the super soldiers circled behind the rocky hills to demolish key infrastructure and sever the alien chain of command. It was a classic pincer maneuver, except the aliens defending the stronghold were rumored to be of a new breed. Reports mentioned hulking bipeds, with advanced exoskeletons and lethal weaponry integrated into their biologically enhanced limbs. Apparently their own attempt at super soul. Earth wouldn't be the only species to exploit advanced genetics. The assault commenced at dawn. Coalition tanks barreled forward, exchanging artillery and plasma salvos with the fortress's outer defenses. Meanwhile, Arlo's platoon advanced from the slopes, running at speeds no unmodified human could match. The ground shook under the bombardment. Arlo saw the outlines of monstrous figures guarding the rear gate, blue-skinned, with heavy chest plates and unnaturally large arms that ended in cannons. Their eyes glowed with hostility. The enemy super soldiers unleashed a barrage as soon as Arlo's squad emerged from the ridgeline, and energy beams tore across the battlefield. One soldier behind Arlo took a direct hit, crashing face down in the dust. The soldier rose a moment later, blood trickling from a wound that seemed half cauterized by the blast. Adrenaline and genetic enhancements propelled him forward again. Closing the distance, the super soldiers engaged in lethal hand-to-hand combat. Arlo dodged a blow from a massive alien fist, his reflexes thrumming at the upper limit of human possibility. He countered with a rapid, concussive strike to the alien's midsection, feeling the impact rattle his own bones. The alien staggered, coughing up thick purple fluid. Another soldier from Arlo's squad unleashed a broad wave of electropulses, forcing the defenders back. When the path was clear, they stormed the gate. Their objective was a central tower rumored to house the enemy's command node. Once disabled, the fortress would be vulnerable. Inside the fortress walls, chaos reigned. Alien squads rushed to contain the breach, but the super soldiers' speed and coordination kept them one step ahead. Explosions reverberated through corridors as the platoon used shaped charges to blast sealed doors. Through each breach, they pushed deeper into the structure. Turning a final corner, they encountered the command node, a bulky cylinder of crackling energy cables connected to a dais where several alien officers frantically worked controls. The aliens whirled around to defend their station. Bolts of sizzling green light rained down. 2 super soldiers took hits, collapsing. Blood spattered the floor. Despite the advanced regeneration, the wounds looked severe. For a heartbeat, Arlo faltered. The entire concept of genetically modifying humans to endure agony in this manner weighed on him. Then, training took over. "Suppressing fire," he yelled. Streams of rifle fire pinned the alien officers while Arlo rushed forward with a high-voltage baton. He jammed the device into the node's main conduit, sparks lighting up the chamber. A thunderous hum built into a deafening roar. A final alien cry died in an abrupt hush, and the command node crashed into a heap of ruined metal. The fortress systems flickered, and the lights went out. It was done. The coalition tanks outside, lacking effective countermeasures, burst through the main gate with little resistance. The stronghold fell. Yet inside the command node chamber, 2 super soldiers lay bleeding. Arlo and his squad gathered around them, the concept of loss stark and raw. These warriors were not invincible. Their training enforced composure, though, so they pressed on. The wounded were evacuated, and the fortress was secured. When reports reached Commander Marta, she felt a tremor of sorrow. Over the following week, she visited each recovered soldier in the forward medical facility. State-of-the-art biotech was being pumped into their bodies, nanites working tirelessly to rebuild muscle tissue. Some responded well, their enhanced physiology making miraculous strides. Others stared into the distance, haunted by the trauma. Engineers could perfect bones, organs, and reflexes, but a mind confronted with mortality did not so easily heal. Marta could not fault them for that. She, too, felt the strain of the many battles. While these super soldiers were her best assets, they were also her greatest responsibility. Word arrived that the aliens were mustering an armada above Straton CN1's orbit. This would not remain a ground war alone. With lines drawn in space, the final conflict might ravage the orbiting fleet and the surface alike. The coalition's star cruisers moved into defensive formation. As an aerial assault became imminent, the super soldiers took up positions in orbital dropships, prepared to deploy wherever the fighting was thickest. The date approached when the alien armada would strike, perhaps dooming the planet if they overwhelmed the coalition's defenses. That day arrived in a burst of wailing alarms. The super soldiers, strapped into drop pods, felt the thrusters roar under them. They descended from orbit like pale comets, punching through the planet's atmosphere. Anti-air batteries flared in every direction. Ships collided in fiery blasts overhead, their twisted metal shards raining down. The pods impacted near the planet's equator, disgorging squads into an inferno of swirling dust and plasma arcs. The aliens had landed en masse, their war machines bristling with new weapons that combined organic and synthetic technology. War beasts, giant scorpion-like creatures with laser stingers, slumbered behind rows of infantry. Meanwhile, overhead, agile alien craft strafed the coalition lines. Arlo's boots hit the ground, and he immediately readied his rifle, scanning for hostiles. He saw no single coherent front line, only a patchwork of cratered terrain, hammered by bombardments. He received a brief text feed from Marta. Find the enemy commander. Neutralize. The data pointed to a massive figure in the distance, swathed in armor. That alien leader marched across the battlefield with lethal precision, blasting coalition vehicles one by one. Arlo signaled his team forward, weaving through a chaotic swirl of dust and debris. The temperature soared, and the acrid tang of burning metal filled the air. They closed in, spotting the commander, encircled by an elite entourage. One soldier tossed an EMP grenade, but the alien commander's personal shield absorbed the burst. In response, a surge of radiant energy erupted toward the squad, forcing them to scramble for cover. Chunks of searing rock and shrapnel rained down. The super soldiers rallied, unleashing a coordinated barrage that tested the commander's defenses. Sparks flew as the alien shield flickered. For a moment, it looked as though they might break through. Then the alien flung a swirling vortex of crackling plasma that hammered the squad. Several super soldiers went sprawling, and Arlo felt a jolt of searing pain as the plasma grazed his shoulder. Alarms blared in his helmet, analyzing the damage. The wound hissed ominously, half burned and partially healed simultaneously. He forced the pain aside, focusing on the mission. Victory here meant possibly saving thousands. Nearby, one of Arlo's squad mates, a stoic soldier named Shendiv, within the alien entourage's line of fire, pulling active suppressor rods from a belt harness. He activated them in a desperate attempt to overload the shield generator. The rods crackled, intensifying the energies around them. The alien commander snarled and swung a heavy blade, but Shen dodged with genetically enhanced reflexes. Then, with a flash of bright white, the shield generator collapsed. The alien commander staggered, momentarily unprotected. Arlo seized the opportunity, flicked his rifle to maximum charge, and fired a single searing shot. The beam tore through the commander's armor and lodged in the alien's chest. As the warlord crumpled, its heavily armored entourage screeched in dismay. However, even with the commander defeated, the alien legion fought on, driven by either fanaticism or an already initiated battle plan. Jizz and dropships and carriers touched down around them, forcing the super soldiers to constantly adapt. Squad by squad they held ground, exhaustion gnawed at their muscles. But regeneration offset some of the physical strain. Even so, mental fatigue had no genetic quick fix. Each soldier battled not only the enemy, but also the incessant fear that their bodies, engineered though they were, had limits. Gradually, the tide shifted. Coalition cruisers in low orbit targeted enemy vessels with well-timed strikes. Ground artillery hammered the alien landing zones. The scale of the fighting dwarfed any war Earth had ever seen, but the super soldiers kept pressing. They had been made for exactly this kind of desperate confrontation, and each step they took carved out a path for the standard human troops to follow. By dusk, the coalition had reclaimed key positions once thought lost. Swarms of alien warriors, demoralized by the loss of their commander, began to retreat, searching for rescue craft. The battered, blazing sky told the story of a shattered invasion attempt. Straightened CN-1 bore scars that would take centuries to heal, but the invaders lost their momentum. As the smoke cleared, an eerie silence settled over pockets of the battlefield. Super soldiers walked among the wreckage, scanning for survivors. Much to their dismay, they discovered a few wounded aliens huddled in craters, wounded and too weak to fight. Some super soldiers were inclined to shoot on sight. This was the enemy after all, but Arlo intervened, raising an arm to stop them. Something in him balked at destroying a helpless foe. Perhaps he'd inherited empathy from the genetic makers, who hadn't entirely wiped out that flicker of human compassion. After a pause, he ordered that the wounded aliens be disarmed and taken to a makeshift field prison. The rest of Coalition Force soon arrived to officially end hostilities on the planet's surface, though the war was not truly over. For a few days, a tense calm spread across Straton CN1. Coalition engineers worked to shore up defenses, and evacuation flights departed with the injured. The super soldiers reassembled near the main landing pads, uncertain of their next direct. Some were still recovering, sporting bandaged arms or walking with slight limps that belied the effort their bodies needed to regenerate properly. In whispered conversations, they wondered if Earth would ever be the same again. They had carried out their purpose, fulfilling the promise of humanity's genetic breakthroughs. Still, the conflict's cost lay heavy. Entire cities lost, families separated, lives irreparably changed. Commander Marta arrived at the landing pads to address them in person. She stepped onto a stack of supply crates, helmet under her arm, face weary but proud. Around her stood the super soldiers, battered but alive. "You all did what many believed impossible," she began, voice shaking slightly with emotion. "You never quit. You never wavered. And because of that, we still have a chance. Our worlds, our people, they remain free, at least for now." The soldiers listened quietly. A few sets of eyes glistened. She continued, "For ages, humanity has struggled to find its place in the cosmos. We refuse to be driven from the stars. Each of you by design made that possible. While others may argue the morality, I say this: thank you. You've shown what it means to protect humanity at all cost." In the dim light of dusk, aircraft roared overhead, carrying reinforcements to distant battlefronts, continuing the cyclical tide of war. The super soldiers boarded their own transports, heading for the next front lines. Some were deployed to the Outer Rim, to quell rebellious worlds that had allied with the alien forces. Others returned to Earth for a period of medical regeneration and psychological calibration. Not a true leave, because they were never fully at liberty. Nonetheless, they did experience small moments of respite, modest dormitories in hidden facilities, a few hours to decompress. In their quiet corners, they pondered the essential question: who were they, truly? Those rare intervals allowed them to reflect. Scientist liaisons from Project Vertex provided counseling, worried that the psychological strain would eventually corrode even the finest enhancements. There was talk of reevaluating the entire program, whether it was sustainable to subject humans, no matter how augmented, to perpetual combat. But the threat to mankind had not yet abated, and so the labs continued to churn out more soldiers, each iteration refined further. Some older generations worried that each upgrade made the new wave less human. Perhaps, though, that was the inevitable trajectory. Meanwhile, the galaxy took notice. Tales spread of these impossibly strong human battalions, turning the tide on frontier worlds. Other species uneasy about Earth's success began their own clandestine research into genetic soldier programs. Tensions ramped up, forging alliances and stoking hostilities. The super soldiers, initially small in number, found themselves in increasing demand. Their presence could shift a battlefield from hopeless to victorious. They demonstrated that Earth was not to be trifled with. Eventually, the Coalition decided to launch an offensive to end the war once and for all, targeting the aliens' homeworld. The final strike would be a colossal gamble. Even with super soldiers, success was far from guaranteed. Whole fleets assembled at the staging point outside Earth's lunar orbiter. The super soldiers prepared for the largest deployment in history. Arlo, still commanding his platoon, steeled himself. The nightmares from Straton CN1 lingered in the corners of his mind. He remembered the faces of fallen comrades and the fleeting compassion he felt for wounded enemies, an endless cycle of creation and destruction, fueled by technology that forged them into living weapons. Yet for all his enhancements, he felt the stirrings of fear. When the day came they launched, waves of ships soared out of Earth's domain, side by side with allied planets that had chosen to stand with humanity. A swirling cosmic vortex opened at the edge of the solar system, a warp corridor bridging light years in a single step. The super soldiers braced in their cryopods for the journey. Then their minds went dark, lulled into dreamless hibernation. Hours later, as the pulse of the corridor spat the fleet into alien territory, they awoke, hearts pounding with cold adrenaline. In that hush, before the storm, they caught glimpses of the alien star in the distance, a sullen red orb surrounding it. The alien fleets drifted in formidable array, an imposing shroud over their homeworld. The last gambit was about to unfold. Machines roared as the two sides collided in orbit. Fighters darted like gnats around lumbering battlecruisers. The super soldiers boarded dropships once more, prepared to descend on the alien capital below. Weapons fire lit the vacuum in neon arcs. Debris swirled, each chunk representing a life or a machine lost to the ravages of war. On the surface, if the super soldiers could break the last lines of defense, the alien government would have to negotiate, for the planet would be indefensible. Arlo stuck close to his squad, focusing on the immediate moment. They were the spear point, engineered to charge where no normal soldier could. This was the truth they must embrace, no matter the moral weight. Under a sky riven by orbital bombardments, they landed. Columns of alien armor lay waiting. The thunder of artillery set the landscape trembling. Super soldiers sprinted across the field, weaving through blasts that carved craters in the planet's rocky soil. They hit the alien lines with unstoppable force, punching through bunkers, demolishing energy barriers, and sowing panic in ranks once deemed infallible. Arlo led them deeper, reading the swirl of war in real time through his neural implant. Their directive was precise: target the central government structure, hold it, and demand surrender. This time there would be no drawn-out occupation, only an ultimatum to end the conflict. Climbing a ridge, Arlo saw the alien capital, a sprawling city of spires and alien architecture. Anti-air turrets spat deadly beams at overhead coalition craft. Starship wreckage burned in the background. Rallying his squad, Arlo pressed onward, ignoring the weight in his chest that told him how many were dying on both sides. The super soldiers waded through entrenched defenses, using advanced weapons to subdue or neutralize the alien defenders. Once inside the city limits, the group spread out, clearing entire blocks of hostiles in record time. A sense of finality coursed through the battered remains of the platoon. Their mission was nearing its end. At last they reached a towering building whose design hinted at function, the seat of alien authority. Inside, the corridor was eerily quiet. Broken windows let in gusts of swirling dust. In a central chamber, the highest-ranking aliens huddled, uncertain and fearful. Their translators sputtered to life as Arlo and his soldiers surrounded them. "Surrender," Arlo said, voice resonating with calm resolve. He had no desire for more bloodshed. "It's over." After a tense pause, one of the alien dignitaries lowered its weapon, speaking in hushed, resigned tones. A universal signal was sent out across the planet, telling their forces to stand down. The war, at least this iteration of it, was at an end. Relief washed over the super soldiers, but they knew that peace was seldom permanent. In the aftermath, negotiations between Earth and the alien powers were hammered out, forging a fragile treaty. Throughout this process, the super soldiers were quietly stationed on observation duty, ensuring compliance. Some eventually returned to Earth, where they were met with both awe and trepidation. They had been the decisive factor, the unstoppable force in countless battles. Yet citizens wondered what place these engineered beings could hold in a peacetime society. Would they be integrated as guardians, or relegated to hidden outposts and labs, awaiting the next threat? As the galaxy slowly calmed, new challenges arose. Insurgent groups labeled the super soldiers abominations, stoking fear among the civilian population. Scientists behind Project Vertex lobbied to expand research into broader applications, curing diseases, extending human lifespans, improving agriculture, arguing that the success in warfare was only the beginning of humanity's genetic revolution. Meanwhile, Arlo and others like him grappled with a strange emptiness. They'd been created for a singular purpose: to win. Now, in the lull of peacetime, they confronted the quiet terror of self-awareness. What did it mean to be human when one's genetic blueprint was so heavily altered? Despite lingering questions, the super soldiers had proven themselves indispensable. Fleet Commander Marta Royce argued for their continued prominence. Having seen them in action, both unstoppable and heartbreakingly fragile, she believed they represented the next stage of humanity's survival. "They are us," she told the Coalition Council. "They have to be. Otherwise, we consign ourselves to repeating a cycle of fear and condemnation that will tear us apart." And so, for better or worse, humanity's ascendance in the galaxy became inextricably tied to these engineered soldiers, far fewer in number than the galaxy's billions of ordinary people, yet holding disproportionate influence by virtue of their power. In the final days of negotiation, the super soldiers took a solemn oath to safeguard life and maintain peace. They would continue to serve, not as mindless instruments of war, but as living symbols of humanity's determination to shape its own destiny. That oath, as uncertain as the future itself, ushered in a new era. The memory of Stratton CN1 and countless other battlefields remain carved in the minds of those who survived. Only time would tell if the super soldiers' existence would guide civilization toward a lasting peace, or if they would be unleashed again, fighting in wars that would redefine the fate of countless worlds. All anyone knew for certain was that humanity had stepped across a threshold, mastering its genetic heritage in pursuit of survival. And in that act, for better or worse, it had changed the course of history forever.